Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome to a video that's a tad bit late, but this is something I really wanted to talk about and discuss in detail, hence why it's coming out a little bit later than when it was revealed, because I wanted to give myself enough time to kind of sit, think over and stew about it. Unfortunately, this has become something that's pretty much impossible for me to avoid, especially since I talk, analyze and discuss MK lore. It's been all over Twitter as well as YouTube. So yeah, there was no way I could get away from any of this. And overall, I do think it's an interesting situation and one that I do plan to break down for you all, talking about what works here and what really doesn't. Please keep in mind there isn't really a script for this video, so if I end up sputtering or going off in different tangents, I do apologize, but I really wanted to get like my honest feelings out here and didn't want to have it be a little bit too linear. But before we do begin, for those that have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, despite clicking on the thumbnail, potential spoilers ahead regarding future DLC. Now whilst this isn't necessarily something solid in stone, as there's no visual confirmation, nor has it been announced by NetherRealm, historically, data mines for Mortal Kombat hold a lot of weight to them, as they usually point us in the right direction of what stuff could be potentially coming our way. So please do consider this your spoiler warning now, as it could potentially give away a bit too much if you want to be surprised. So for those out the loop, there has been a data miner called Interloco, who's been able to go through the files of the game and unravel some interesting bits of information. And through these individual bits of coding, there has been audio files in game, very strongly alluding to the inclusion of Cyrax and Sector, which all in all is a great reveal, a great selection too. However, the biggest surprise to have come out of this isn't their inclusion, but that the duo might have a gender-bent take on them, because when you do listen to the audio files, they are distinctly female. And this is a really interesting take. Now, as many of you do know, I like the new era. I like a lot of the changes. I've been covering this shit for nearly 10 years. I need some change myself, for the sake of my sanity if anything. But there are ones that work and ones that simply do not. So with Sektor and Cyrax in mind, I feel like this has kind of come out of nowhere. Because prior to this, never at any point has this been foreshadowed. Nor is it a thing I believe we distinctly asked for, and that's kind of my problem here. Who is this for? Why has this been done? Here's the thing, gender-bent characters don't bother me too much. I can't say I'm a fan, but if there's foreshadowing and a build-up into it, then that feels a lot more natural and makes a lot of sense to me. Because at least prior to that point, the idea was built upon brick by brick, than simply something that's slapped on and given for the sake of it. Because that can devoid any sense of attachment you get to the new successor. It doesn't feel natural. And in the case of Mortal Kombat 11, with arcade ladder endings in mind especially, I feel like it allows them to play with the idea without having to fully commit to it. It gives the audience a lot of natural feedback to the suggestion, and can also stop the dev team and studio from putting maybe too many eggs in one basket. And that's kind of why I find this idea so outlandish to me. Now, gender-bent characters aren't exactly something new to MK. The idea of this was heavily teased in Mortal Kombat 11, with some of them making a lot of sense and landing, whereas the others not quite so much. And I believe that it comes down to the distinction between a name and a mantle here, as it's really what does the heavy lifting and makes this kind of happen. Cyrax and Sector aren't code names. It is their birth names. It's been established in the canon. So hypothetically, if this was changed or altered, then this all in itself feels incredibly sudden. And I get what they're going for, but let's go through a few examples here that kind of make a bit more sense and actually do work. Nightwolf, also known as Grey Cloud, is a great example of this. Why? Because it actually expands on the canon and lore of the Nightwolf name. For those unaware, in Nightwolf's arcade ladder ending, we learned that Nightwolf isn't just a name, but a mantle that is bestowed by the Great Spirit, one to protect the Native Americans through the Matoka. Grey Cloud is simply the most recent in a long line of warriors and protectors of his lineage. Thus, the passing of the title makes a lot more sense here, as it even foreshadows a female Nightwolf, It's one earned through self-sacrifice and proving yourself to be worthy in the eyes of the Great Spirit. So each and every Nightwolf has to be seen as worthy to succeed their predecessor. It makes it feel that much more special and does a lot for the Matoka. Another example is Fujin, and this one's a little bit more flimsy, because in his arcade ladder ending, when he peers into other timelines and reality, we do get a slight snippet and tease of a female counterhalf. Now on paper, I actually don't mind this too much, but canonically, I do think it kind of complicates things here, because names like Raiden and Fujin aren't necessarily titles. Like, the original Raiden doesn't appear in the present because he allows himself to pass on. He bestows Liu Kang with his godhood, and Liu Kang himself doesn't adopt the name of Raiden because Liu Kang is Liu Kang's name. And we know that the Raiden of the present does have a sister, which is kind of hinting that it will be this take on the character. But it's particularly strange with Fujin here, as he sits in a really weird place in the canon. Because if the new era is built upon the foundation of the Aftermath timeline, then yeah, it kind of works and makes sense, because he dies during that timeline. But multiverse theory also exists, and from what you can tell, this is getting really confusing really quick. Here's the thing, I'm not against this idea, but you're really gonna have to sell me on it. Why should I care about this version of Fujin? What makes her unique and different to the original? Does she have powers akin to her previous self, or something completely different? Does she gain them in the same way that Raiden does? Or do they take an interesting approach and style to her, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Or, for you Zoomers out there, Ying Li from Shang-Chi when she faces Wen Wu. When you present the idea like that, it's definitely more intriguing. That's how you can sell me on it, but ultimately, it does come down to the execution at the end of the day. And that's my one worry with Sektor and Cyrax here, because at least with Fujin and Nightwolf, these ideas have been played about with. They've not been fully committed to, but it goes back to what I said about audience reception here. And going back to the duo, I kind of don't get it, because the selling point of the cyborgs has always been that they're cyborgs. Male or female just has never been in like the sphere of conversation with these two. It's a very out there change in idea. And I know to some of you, you could flip around the question of, well, what's wrong with them now being women? And honestly, nothing at all. But it feels like a forced change when you do have other female characters waiting to be added to the roster. Especially if you're looking at female ninjas like Scarlet and Jade. Because again, as you all know, I'm fine with the new era. I like that they're exploring different things. I simply don't understand why they would do this. Because I'm looking at this from the perspective of, what does this do for the character? What does it add to them that we haven't seen from their previous selves? Like, look at Baraka. Previously, a pretty forgettable henchman with an awesome design, but an individual that people didn't really care of beneath the surface level. Very little was understood of his character, as he was just seen as a killing machine. But now in the new era, we have a tragic monster who we can sympathize with and understand fundamentally as a character. Whilst, yes, there are elements taken away from him here, they've done so much more than they've taken away. Another example is Reptile, aka Syzoth, who suffered from a very similar situation, being largely relegated to mentally degenerative henchmen. In MK1, he's given some real character here, and a very tragic backstory, cast out as a freak and a loner amongst his own people. Thus, he would gain some resolution by the end of the game, earning the respect of his people, and being hailed as their champion and hero. These are perfect examples of repackaging that really do benefit the character here. Look, if anything, this whole situation stirs a lot of intrigue, but admittedly, this is going to be a pretty hard sell. Like, cybernetic female ninjas aren't anything new to the series. We had that with Frost, and whilst conceptually, I thought it was really damn cool, in execution, it was quite unfulfilling. which is why I'm very hesitant about this approach and change being so sudden. I don't want to hate these new ideas, I don't want to have a problem with new Cyrax and new Sector, but the new era is at its best when it's reincorporating lingering ideas teased in the past, or at the very least adds a new perspective and depth to characters, unexplored in prior canons in different ways. Suddenly switching up things too fast too soon causes a really nasty whiplash effect. I'm definitely not writing off this idea, as it could wind up being a very pleasant surprise. But man, I definitely have to see it in person to kind of have my own opinion of it. I don't know how to feel about the decision change, because I don't know how it's designed to add anything to the character. Like I said, the main selling point of the cyborgs has always been cyborgs. You don't really see anything beneath that metal dome. But mind you, I know they've kind of teased them being suits, instead of the more traditional mechanized cyborgs. Plus their audio files haven't been automated so they don't sound robotic. So that could very well be the reason for why they've changed it? But I don't know, I have very mixed feelings on the creative changes and decisions here. I just really hope it's good, man, because we haven't had Cyrax or Sector kind of playable since KP2 of MKX, and even then they shed the core movesets of Triborg. They haven't had their own sense of individuality since MK9. But yeah, that kind of wraps up everything I did want to say in this video, and I hope it's kind of giving you more of a perspective on not just where I stand on things, but more so the importance of foreshadowing and how that can impact games going forward. I think building up into an idea is far more important than just throwing it out there. I mean, look at Tonaga, the Dragon King. That character had a lot of build up from Deadly Alliance, and we had a hell of a reveal at the start of Deception. That is what I mean by the importance of foreshadowing. So now I relay that question to all of you. What are your thoughts on the current changes surrounding Sektor and Cyrax? Do you like them? What are your thoughts on the whole situation? What would you like to see be done with them in the new canon? Please do comment down below. But for now everyone, that's been it for me. Please take care and I'll catch you in the next one.